Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Inshallah, in today's reflection on some of the verses of Salatul Taraweeh, the ayat that were recited in Salatul Taraweeh, we'll talk about a couple of verses from Surah Yusuf, and then with some of the other relevant surah ayat from other surahs of the Quran we'll talk about, inshallah. In Surah Yusuf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about a very beautiful story of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. And there are many lessons can be learned from the life of Yusuf alayhi salam. And literally it can take hours to just talk about those lessons which are mentioned in the story of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam mentioned in the Quran. But inshallah, we'll try to talk about at least a couple tonight. In ayah number 38 to 40, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ba'ad a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. واتبعت ملة آبائي إبراهيم وإسحاق ويعقوب ما كان لنا أن نشرك بالله من شيء ذلك من فضل الله علينا وعلى الناس ولكن أكثر الناس لا يشكرون. In this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and this is in a conversation that was happening between Yusuf alayhi salam and some of the prisoners while Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam was falsely accused and imprisoned. And in the prison, he was talking to some of the prisoners, and he was giving the da'wah to those prisoners while he was talking to them. And he said, I have followed the religion or deen of my father, Millat Abai, Ibrahim wa Ishaq wa Yaqub. And he's referring to Ibrahim, Ishaq, and Yaqub. And never would we attribute any partners whatsoever to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is from the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the fadl of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on us, on the mankind. But most men thank not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They neither believe in Allah nor worship. And Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, as we know of the lineage of it mentioned in the Quran, his father was a prophet, Yaqub alayhi salam. His grandfather was Ishaq, was also a prophet. And his great-grandfather was Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. So these are four successive Anbiya back to back we mentioned, and so that shows the great lineage of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam as well. And he is mentioning about all these prophets that none of them made any partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. None of them did the shirk. And one specific thing which is mentioned here, which I would like to talk about today, in here, which says that ذَلِكَ مِنْ فَضْلِ اللَّهِ عَلَيْنَا وَعَلَى النَّاسِ وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَشْكُرُونَ. That this is the blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the fadl from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, grace from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on us and to the mankind, that Allah subhanahu that we should not be we did not attribute whatsoever to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but they're saying that وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَشْكُرُونَ, but majority of the people do not thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they do not neither believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the ayah goes on, يَا صَاحِبَيْ السِّجْنِ أَأَرْبَابٌ مُتَفَرَّقُونَ خَيْرٌ أَمِ اللَّهُ الْوَاحِدُ الْقَهَّارُ. So referring to two of the prisoners that he was talking to, the one who came and presented their dreams to Yusuf alayhi salam, he said, O two companions of the prison, are many different gods better, or Allah, the one, the irresistible, Al-Qahhar? ما تعبدون من دونه إلا أسماء سميتموها أنتم وآباؤكم ما أنزل الله بها من سلطان. That he says that you do not worship besides him, but only names that you have forged, you made it up, you and your fathers. In al-hukmu illa lillah. And then it says that the command is for none but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The rule is not for nobody but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Amara alla ta'budu illa iyyahu. He has commanded that you worship none but him. ذلك دين القيم ولكن أكثر الناس لا يعلمون. And this is the straight path of deen of of worshiping one Allah. But a majority of the people, أكثر الناس لا يعلمون. So you can see two important things which are mentioned here. Well, we're going to talk about today. There are many things mentioned here. One is that the rule only belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Judgments belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is the just. Allah is the one who provides the rules and belongs to only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and only Allah is the one supposed to be worshipped. And other aspect which is mentioned is the majority of the people are not thankful. Majority of the people are the one who do not know, they do not have the knowledge. That's the status of the majority. The reason I want to talk about two things here. One is that rule belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam's life we're talking about. And unfortunately, it has been mentioned as if Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, na'udhu billah, he participated in the kufr system, or he was implementing the kufr system. Of course, this is a buhtan, this is an accusation on a prophet. Prophets were sent to call the people towards worshipping one Allah, to rule by the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That was the purpose of sending the prophets, to make people believe in La ilaha illallah and to live by La ilaha illallah. Okay, now the part I want to talk about today is, as these two ayat talks about, one they say that أكثر الناس لا يعلمون, the majority of the people do not know, majority of people do not think. And this idea has been mentioned many places in the Quran, and I will just show some of the instances where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talked about. But at the same time, why is it important for us to understand this? Because there is something we have to have a clarity on the subject of the shura. When we talk about the shura, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us that وَالَّذِينَ اسْتَجَابُوا لِرَبِّهِمْ وَأَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَأَمْرُهُمْ شُورَ بَيْنَهُمْ مِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and those who answer the call of their Rabb, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to worship none but Allah, and perform salah, iqamah salah, and who conduct their affairs by mutual consultation, and who spend what we have bestowed on them. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that these are the qualities of the people who worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who establish the salah, who answer the call of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They deal with the issues with the shura, with the consultation. And this consultation and other places Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us to do the shura as well, or consultation with each other, has to be understood properly. That shura is or consultation is about what? Is it about to make our own laws by ourselves, or it is something else? Obviously, we just saw that what Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam was teaching or telling his two prisoners, that the rule belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He is the only one to be worshipped. And we understand that following the commands of Allah, following His rules, is part of ibadah, part of the worship. Hence, worshipping one Allah would mean that we rule by, or we live by, the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. So what does shura entails then? Shura meaning of shura, or the consultation, is that the things which Allah Azza wa Jal has made it mubah, made it permissible, and we find more than one ways of doing things allowed in Islam. And when we say allowed in Islam, means that both things are allowed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we are not talking about two ijtihad, for example, or not talking about if two mujtahideen, they have reached two different conclusions, two or multiple of them reached to multiple conclusions for an issue. And when we say ijtihad, meaning they extract the rules from the Quran and the Sunnah. And when they reach different solutions for a problem, or a majority of them reached one solution and the minority reached other solution or the rule regarding an issue, here it does not mean that you go by the majority and assuming that majority must be right. When you look at the rules of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we extract from the Quran and Sunnah, the thing that we have to look into is the strength of an opinion, strength of the evidences used to conclude what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants. And when we talk about ijtihad, of course, ijtihad is an issue where you can have ikhtilaf, that's fine. But to say that we will conclude things just by saying if the majority of the people reach a conclusion, then they must be right, that is not the way to conclude what is right and what is wrong. And also, shura is not the way to just start making laws from their own mind and say Allah commanded us to do the shura, hence we can just get together and whatever the majority of the people say we will go by, and that will be incorrect because of Allah Azza wa Jal has commanded us to live by his commands. That's one aspect. And when we look at the aspect of this majority that a lot of time has been misunderstood in Islam, actually we find it other way around. It's not the issue of majority will always be wrong or majority will always be right. Issue is not majority is not the issue of extracting the rules, to be very clear. Yes, there are places where majority can be used, but this is not the issue when we talk about knowing what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants about certain things. In those cases, we have to just follow what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants. It's not the issue of majority. As a matter of fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, as I was talking about the two of the places in Surah Yusuf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned about what the state of or status of the majority is. Majority of the people do not have the knowledge. Majority of the people do not thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Similarly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah An'am, وَإِن تُطِعْ أَكْثَرَ مَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ يُضِلُّوكَ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ إِن يَتَّبِعُونَ إِلَّا الظَّنَّ وَإِنْ هُمْ إِلَّا يَخْرُصُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if you obey most of those on the earth, they will mislead you far away from Allah's path, and they follow nothing but conjecture, and they do nothing but lies. So that's the status of the majority. Again, Allah is mentioning. And similarly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions Surah Al-Baqarah, talking about Inna Allah ladhu fadlin ala nasi walakinna akthara nasi la yashkurun. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, indeed, Allah is full of bounty to mankind, but majority of the people, most of the men do not thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In Surah Al-Imran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر وتؤمنون بالله ولو آمن أهل الكتاب لكان خيرا لهم ومنهم المؤمنون وأكثرهم الفاسقون. Again, we see something different. So it's a similar thing. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about the ummah, the best ummah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raised for the mankind, the Muslim ummah, who enjoin the good, forbid the evil, they believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala al-kitab, that among them that it was good for them to believe in what Muhammad brought, but majority of them are the one who are transgressors. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used the term al-fasiqun, for majority of the people among them were the fasiqun. Another place Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ جَاءَتْهُمْ رُسُلُنَا بِالْبَيِّنَاتِ ثُمَّ إِنَّ كَثِيرًا مِنْهُمْ بَعْدَ ذَلِكَ فِي الْأَرْضِ لَمُسْرِفُونَ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about in Surah Al-Ma'idah, that the meaning of the thing is, and indeed there came to them our messengers with clear proof, evidences, and signs. Even then, after that, many of them continued to exceed the limits. So majority of them were exceeding they were the musrifun. And Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned in Surah Al-A'raf that قُلْ إِنَّمَا عِلْمُهَا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. That tell them that the knowledge belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's the one who's all-knowing, but most of the mankind do not know. So we can see the trend here that Allah is talking about. And there are many ayat, and this is just a small talk that we are doing here. It's not, we cannot go into too much of a detail. The point is there are many verses in the Quran besides a few of them that I have talked about, where Allah Azza wa Jalla talks about the state or the status of the majority of the people. They are the people who do not have the ilm. They do not thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are the one who reject the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are the one who are transgressors. They are fasiqun. They are musrifun. They are Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala صرفنا للناس في هذا القرآن من كل مثل فأبى فأكثر الناس إلا كفورا. Majority of the people are they do the disbelief to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed. So there are the idea should be clear from that it's not that the majority is the one that needs to be followed. A majority is the one who will come up with the rules and regulations, because if we look at the majority, this is what majority concludes in general. As I said, to be very clear, there are a few things where majority opinion is allowed in Islam to be taken, and to but that does not entail to make laws by majority, or to say that whatever the majority agrees on, that must be right, because majority can agree on something which is in disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course, in that case, we are not allowed to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the obedience of the majority of the people even. So Yusuf is very clear about the subject. We should learn from Surah Yusuf. If we go in more detail of that, we will see many lessons from Surah Yusuf, including this, that he, like all the other prophets, was calling for La ilaha illallah, to worship Allah alone and nobody else, and that the rule belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's not and the majority of the people, we find them that they are not thankful to Allah. They are the one who do not have the knowledge. They are the one who transgressors. They are the one who are criminal. They are transgressors, and so on and so forth. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us on the right path, and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us the ones who study the Quran, read the Quran, memorize the Quran, understand the Quran, and apply the Quran in our lives, and call the people towards the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه غفور رحيم. جزاكم الله خيرا.